Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you take time to listen to the podcast. And because you've been listening to the podcast, you helped us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you so much for listening in. And if you would go ahead and rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, it will help us keep going. Really appreciate you. Okay, now today I'm talking with Kim O'Neill, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But before the conversation, let me tell you a little bit about Kim. Kim's a three-time best-selling author, including being the co-author on a book with featuring Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor, which happens to be award-winning, and the title is Navigating the Clickety Clack: How to Live a Peace-Filled Life in a Seemingly Toxic World. I love that title. And she's the host of the Every Day is a New Day show and co-host of the Let's Talk Fabulous show. She's an award-winning, WISE certified coach. And if that's not enough, she takes a holistic approach in her coaching. She coaches strong, heart-centered women who feel like they've lost themselves and would love to reclaim their authentic, vibrant self, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. Welcome, Kim O'Neill.
Thank you, Robin. So good to have you here. I thought I was hosting for a second. So sorry. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're switching roles. You're not the interviewer today.
I can't believe I just said that. I don't think I've ever done that before. So, but yes, it's absolutely, of course, nice to have you here on your own show as well.
I hope that encourages people and inspires. Like, hey, I have to check out her show because she's in the groove of hosting.
Oh my goodness.
All right, so let's get started. You heard me just kind of read your official bio, some of it. There's so much that I didn't include, but why don't you tell us in your own words two things? First, a little bit about you, whatever you want to say about you, and then about the work you do.
I love your particular show because purpose has been something that I have always been passionate about. When I say always, for me, I somehow always go back to age 5. I don't, I know it might sound a little too much, but purpose is something that's always been on my radar ever since I was very young. So, um, to have been on my life journey and feel like I've been able to make progress towards that is just so meaningful to me. And I think, and I know it's meaningful for you too. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. And I'll leave it at that. That's a very core element of who I am, is really that element of feeling connected to purpose.
Okay, now do you want to say anything about what you do? And then I'm gonna go back to age 5. I have to go back there, but first tell us about a little bit about what work you're doing today, these
You know,
days.
yeah, so to me, the people that I work with don't necessarily have to feel a deep sense of purpose themselves, although I think it tends to show up when you're working with anybody and helping them move through their challenges and feel more confident in themselves. But ultimately, one of the core elements of what I love to be able to do is help people have a deeper sense of feeling whole and connected within who they are and whatever it is they're doing, so that they feel more empowered. They feel more free in their life to do and to be, what feels authentic for them. I think that when one person does that, that is an absolute inspiration to everyone else who gets to witness it. And I believe that that's ultimately the journey our world is on right now. It's one light, one person at a time, and more are saying, yep, I'm setting myself free. I choose to be me. I choose to do what's important to me. And they're allowing themselves to feel more and more fulfilled from the inside out. And I love it. I love
Yes.
it.
And of course, I love that. I love that you're doing that work. It just inspires me hearing you say that.
Mhm.
Okay, so now I can't skip over when you just talked about 5 years old. So what was happening when you were 5 years old that you remember since you were 5? Or tell us anything about that time.
Yeah, that's the key. What do I remember?
Yeah.
So there what I remember is I remember having a dream. It was a recurring dream, and this is going to sound really cheesy. This is just one element of it, but you asked, so I'm going to share it. I somehow had this recurring dream of like DuckTales. And there's like that one image, and I never even watched DuckTales as a kid, but so I don't know if you did, but in the opening, because I've seen the opening, there's this opening of like, and this may not sound like it connects, but let me finish. So anyway, in the opening scene, there's something about the I don't know, grandfather Ducktail or whoever he is, and he's got this big thing of money, all these coins, and he's laying in it. And somehow I had this recurring dream with that. And I know that's simply talking about money, and purpose for me is not about money. And yet, of course, I want to make money through my purpose. But there was something in that realm where I had this sense of bigness, and and there was an element of self-expression, self-expansion, this inherent knowing and connection to like, I want to be able to help a lot of people and work with a lot of people. And so I don't know, that big amount of money may have simply just been a representation of, right, all, maybe if we think of all the coins as all the people that I have the potential, any of us have the potential to connect with and help, and just be a positive part of someone else's journey. That's what comes to mind when you ask me about my memories of
Yeah.
five.
Yeah, I love that. And there's something about, that experience that you connect with as an adult to say, "Hey, that was the beginning of my thinking about this." Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And I won't go into it now because I don't wanna take up our time with you, and I've talked about it on other podcast episodes, but I say when people say to me, as I do work with helping people find their own purpose and meaning in their work in particular, I say it started when I was 6 years old.
No way. Okay, what was that about for you? You go
Yeah,
ahead, say
okay,
something.
okay, I have to share the stories. For listeners, if you heard the story before, you get to hear it again. Alright, so when I was I think it was 6 years old, I have a distinct memory of it being summertime, and I'm sitting on the front porch of the house where I grew up in Connecticut. And it looks like from the outside one big house, but it's really 3 families inside. And my
Okay.
parents own the house, and so I lived there with my siblings and my cousins, so altogether, there were about 8 of us, all the kids all around the same age. And so I'm just sitting on the porch, it was no school, so I knew it was summer, and just kind of daydreaming and looking across the street, looking at the trees, and I hear the kids, all of my cousins and my sister, they're laughing and playing, and then they're about to come out onto the porch where I was sitting. And I hear my father say to them, "Don't go out there and bother Robin. She's out there contemplating the meaning of life."
Ah.
And they laughed, and, he laughed and they laughed, but they didn't come out. And I thought, "Oh, they're laughing at me. So I'm
Oh.
weird because I'm out here by myself, just kind of being by myself, and they're all playing, right?" Alright, so now fast forward as an adult, thinking about that moment and thinking how I do take time for reflection all throughout the years. I do ask myself these big questions of life. I don't know if in that moment I was saying, "What's the meaning of life?" But I wouldn't doubt it, and somehow he knew it. So that was the beginning of my work in helping people find meaning and purpose.
I love it. I love how we can trace these things back. Um, yeah, I can relate to some of that for sure in my
Yeah,
childhood as well.
defining moments, right? They're defining moments, those moments that stand out. And, I like sharing that story, and I'm glad you asked because who we are talking to today,
Mhm.
who are women who are looking for purpose. I mean, podcasts, and I'll say more about this later, is for women, but I've also hear men saying, "Oh, Robin, I enjoy your podcast." I'm like, "Okay, great."
That's awesome.
They are people who are seeking, um, meaning and purpose and fulfillment in their work. I focus on work, but for them, it could be life and work. And connects with your work because that's what I believe your purpose is, being your authentic self. And I have a way to get to that and all the whole process and to make decisions to keep you in that alignment. But you and I, we have that in common.
I love it.
All right. So now tell me a little bit about uh, navigating the clickety clack. Say more about that book. What's it about?
Yeah, so Navigating the Clickety Clack, it's actually an anthology series, and I believe there have been at least two, possibly three books of it now. So I was in the first one, and it's all filled with stories of people who have been able to basically turn adversity into something positive, right? But then specifically, where an outside person might be able to look at a scenario and say, oh no, that's chaos, right? That's a horrible situation. And so when we're faced with something like that, because we all have been at some point, how do you go within a chaotic or seemingly chaotic situation or toxic situation? How do you maintain peace?
Yeah.
How do you yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was agreeing with you. And your story, I'm guessing then you shared a story of overcoming some adversity.
I did. So yeah, the story I shared in that one actually relates back to when I was first starting coaching as a pre-employment interview coach, helping people become more confident for their job interviews. Um, and oh goodness, the story I shared in there, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden.
Okay.
No, in a nutshell, it basically was about at the very beginning of that journey, before I really delved into the coaching, I was faced with being laid off, and it's like, for a lot of people that can be like the end of the world, like, oh no, what do I do? I'm being laid off, and you've got a time constraint, you've got to get another job, what's going to happen? And so it was really my story of working through that, and I feel like there were miracles that showed up, and a lot of it speaks to my commitment and determination that there will be another job. There will not be a gap, and that's exactly what I manifested. I manifested an even better job, more pay, zero gap between one job to the next. And it was actually a really wonderful experience, how it turned out.
Wow, wow. I'm sure that's inspiring somebody right now. It might be somebody who just had that exact same experience. You just never know.
You
So,
just never know. Everything is possible. Even when you think, even when you think something bad is happening, we don't always know how it's happening for our greater good. And I will just add that part of the gift of what happened in my story was that I ended up at a place where my coworkers definitely became more like family, and they actually helped me. I never saw this part coming. They actually had helped me heal indirectly. They helped me heal from a situation that had been really challenging and emotional for me, prior to then that had happened. So it was this beautiful blessing of how these people showed up in my life, and then the job and just all of it coming together was wonderful.
I love that. I love that. And I can't help but notice something else you and I have in common, even though we didn't know this before the conversation and we've talked and shared. But I too was a pre-employment. I mean, it the title I had was pre-employment instructor. And my job was to help women, and these women happened to have been women who had been receiving assistance, welfare assistance, but they wanted to go back into getting their jobs, and they were mothers, right? So
Okay.
my job as pre-employment instructor was to help them not only with their interviewing skills, but help them develop their self-confidence and self-esteem because the company was smart enough to know they probably wouldn't get the job if they weren't confident in their interview. And so this is that work, interestingly enough, is the kernel it planted the seed for what I'm doing now because I was able to help them see the best of who they were. And so then they can then deliver that in an interview. And so that's a big part of my work now, helping people get at the best of who they are and using some of those same methods I learned back then.
I love that. That's awesome, Robin.
You and I mean, who knew?
I know. Well, and here was what's interesting is when I started that, I was I had had a few people say, "Oh, what's that?" First off, they would say, "What's a coach?" And then they'd say, "What's an interview coach?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's exactly what it sounds like, right? But I get it. If you're not doing this type of work, it can sound like some foreign abstract thing. And I had actually at the time searched online for other interview coaches in my area. I think I found only two, and I don't even know if they were in my area. It might have been like in the country or something. And that's not to say that's all there was, but that's all I could find. And I thought, okay, now I get why everyone's asking, what is that? There's very few. So I love it.
And then here we go. And we didn't even know about it. All right. So part of the reason why I wanted to invite you to talk to everybody because I just had the sense immediately, I think even before we talked, that you have a sense of purpose in your work. I feel like I see the passion and the light coming through. And I thought, what an inspiration for others. And so is that true? Do you feel like you have a sense of purpose in what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. To me, my one non-negotiable for when I get to the end of my life is if if I were to feel like I got to the end of my life and feel like I didn't come fulfill my purpose. And have I always had exact clarity on what that looks like? No, I've had pieces and elements of it. And as I've moved more in that direction, in the direction of my bliss, I've gained more and more clarity, and the direction has been focused. And there's even been some, turns, and that's been fine because it's all evolved the way that that has just been best for me and those that I work with. But absolutely, and I am so grateful. I've actually been doing some new things lately, and the new things that are connected more to my purpose lately, and I'm noticing there's another level of inner peace that has been showing up lately, and it's just like I've been having lots of moments where I'm just like, I'm so grateful. And this didn't happen because I just simply said I want to fulfill purpose, right? I had to take steps. I had to put things into action, and I point that out because there was actually a time many years ago where I did somehow think that, well, I know that I'm here for a purpose, and I know I had elements of what I felt passionate about and connected to, and I just had this kind of, like, I guess, assumption, which we're not supposed to do, right? But I kind of had this assumption that, well, then things are going to fall into place, at some point, all on their own. And when I got to, I'll say I'm in my mid 40s now. And at the end of my 20s, early 30s, I was like, uh-oh, whoa, okay, things haven't quite evolved yet to the degree that I would have liked them to. And I'm like, uh-oh, okay, what's going on? What do I need to do? What do I, what difference needs to happen here? And that's when I realized, oh, I thought that I was putting in a certain degree of action, and I had been, but it was time to kick it up a notch. And so that was like a big aha moment at the time. That might sound really obvious to some, but I really think that when you have this deep sense of feeling something, you could start to miss that element of, you have to continue to do action too. Don't just assume everything. Yes, things are going to shift into place, but your action helps propel that forward too. So
Yes.
yeah,
And I think that's a good point, and I would imagine that many people, if I would venture to say, or not even most, might not realize that it does take some action because you feel like it's supposed to flow. So
right.
I'm glad you shared that. Yeah. So you have a strong sense of purpose. Do you think it's important for other people to have a sense of purpose?
I think it's really helpful. Now, the reason why I'm not just going to flat out say yes is because I've learned over time that not everyone connects to purpose in the same way that I do. And so that's simply why I say that. First off, for those that do who connect to a sense of purpose, we don't all experience it in the same way. So for me, I experience purpose through my career. That is what's very fulfilling for me. Now, does it, expand beyond there? Absolutely. But that's the core pathway for me in fulfilling my sense of purpose. For others, they fulfill what feels like purpose to them through having a family, right? And you can certainly have career and family and all of these things, but they're just certain emphasis for people, right? For some, it's like, well, I have a job just because I got to have some money coming in, and oh, maybe for some, they might even be able to say, I just need something to do with my time. There might be that. And then their purpose is, no, my purpose is my family, or purpose could be my community and what I do with them. Purpose could be, could be church, could be any sort of hobby. It does not have to look the same way. And I think there are even varying degrees of how people feel connected to their purpose. And that's okay. Like, there's no right or wrong. I believe there's no right or wrong to this. It's going to be unique to the individual. But the reason why I think that is very helpful is because it gives that added layer of meaning to our lives. And when we feel that sense of purpose, and as if we are working in that purpose, and in whatever capacity, whether it's career or something else, then you get to experience that deeper sense of fulfillment. And that connection to that can also help a person get through times of adversity. So,
Yes. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just said. Everything in how it doesn't have to be one way. And my particular, I focus on people who want purpose through their career, but absolutely I agree, it shows up in many ways. And so
yeah.
I'm glad that you shared that. All right. So now let me tell you who the podcast is for, because then I'm going to ask you to share some of your experience with them. And when I started the podcast, and I told you before we started recording, it took me a little while to get going. I had to get past some fear. But okay, so I said to myself, "Oh, when I was in high school, I had this fantasy to be on the radio." 'Cause back then there were podcasts, and I thought, "Oh, wouldn't that be cool to be on the radio?" But I didn't think much of it because I didn't know anybody on the radio. I didn't know it was a thing. In my high school mind, it was just a fantasy. All right, fast forward now when, podcasts became more popular in recent years, I said, "Oh, now that I feel like I have something to say to people, I'm gonna start a podcast." And then thought, "Well, who's the podcast for?" And I'm like, "Oh, I know who it's for. It's for high achieving women." And this is my description of high achieving women. Women who are responsible, goal oriented, ambitious in a positive way, good at a few things and people notice it. And they're the ones in their professional lives. People come to them and ask them questions. It could be about their work or not about their work. It's just like they're the go-to person for questions. And in their personal lives, at home, family, friends, neighbor, community, people will ask them just random things. They're the go-to person. And so that person now has been thinking about, how can I find more meaning and purpose in my work? I'm at a certain stage of my life or my career where I'm feeling like there's something more to this. And so that's the person we're talking to here today.
Love it. I love that woman. She's awesome.
Do you resonate with who she? You know anybody like that?
Mhm, yeah. Yeah.
Saw you nodded like you were like, yeah, I know her. That sounds like me. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So now, but the difference between you and her, you have a strong sense of purpose in your work, and she's going through this transition where maybe she had it and doesn't, or she's been looking for it and have just has been working based on other people's expectations, maybe, or what society thought, or just kind of going through what she thought. And now she's realizing, hey, wait a minute, there must be more to this. And you've had quite a journey on your own and thought about this and helped others in various ways. So, from any area of your life and work, what's something you could share with her that might even be little known about having purpose or finding purpose? And I mean, you already dropped some gems, but what else can you add to what you've said already?
Well, for some women, this is going to be already obvious. And I think for a lot of the women that you've described, and I can think back to a prior version of myself, there can be a degree of not fully being in tune with your emotions. And that can be from a variety of things. Could be, past conditioning or past wounding, and maybe blocking ourselves off to certain things. It could be this assumption that, well, no, I'm a high powered, productive, high achieving woman. And so it's go, go, go. Maybe you really pride yourself on how intelligent you are, and maybe having a strategic mind and being able to, do all these things that you do. And are you overlooking the value of what your emotions may have also been communicating to you and yet are being ignored and neglected? When we are in tune with that, that's going to open up a well of our ability to be able to continue to be fulfilled from the inside out. And I'm saying this really succinct as if, oh, it's just one and done. It's so simple. No, I believe it's a process, especially for the woman who's like, oh, yeah, I know she's right. I need to do some of that. There might be some healing to do. There might be some shifting of limiting beliefs and starting to rewire how we think about emotions and people who are expressive, people who are allow themselves to be creative. I was just talking to someone recently, a client, who was saying that she would like to be more creative, and yet she believes that if she were, that would mean that she's more lazy. And I think that is another form of how this can show up, is that, what do you mean? I have to be go, go, go. I can't do something that would be less than, that who this high achieving identity that I have could, be perceived as. And yet tapping into your creativity, your emotions, what makes you happy, really spending time on those things, and allowing yourself to feel and move through and savor and carve out time in your schedule, like really valuing what your emotions and all these things bring to your life is going to amplify and elevate all these other areas, especially if you're looking for a deeper sense of purpose. Because ultimately, you're looking then for a deeper sense of connection, and you have access to that right within you. It's going to start with looking at your emotions. So that's my, yeah, that's what comes up.
Yes, yeah, and I can relate to that. I can relate to that. I mean, I see it in my own life, and I'm inspired by hearing it from you even now. All right. Well, Kim, you and I have been talking for a while now. You've been very generous with your time. So before we tell people how they can be in touch with you, what's something that I didn't think to ask, or something that pops up in your mind? Or if not, it's okay. But if there's something, one more thought you have to leave conversation before we tell people how they can be in touch with you. Anything come to mind?
What comes to mind is for the woman who's resonated with this conversation so far, I want to challenge her to do something outside her norm. Do something different. Do something that does not fit into the box that you are already familiar with. Do something that might feel spontaneous, might seem a little crazy, but challenge yourself. And I say challenge because for some people are going to be like, okay, yeah, that's a breeze, I can do that. And others are going to be like, that's like, no, I'm not willing to. And you can come up with all these logical, rational explanations. And yet is that your fear talking, just acting as a blockage, preventing you from going to that deeper place. So if you said yes to that, then I absolutely challenge you to do something different so you can prove to yourself that you are able to set yourself free and expand in those bigger ways, because ultimately it's going to serve you first. And then, of course, others that you are in contact with as well. So that's my little challenge and tip for her.
I love it. I'm going to take the challenge myself. I'm going to do something different today because
Yeah.
I am a creature of habit. I'm
I love it.
going to do something different today. Kim, this has been an inspiring conversation. I'm guessing there might be people who want to reach out to you, hear more from you. So where can they be in touch with you?
They can visit my website at kimoneillcoaching.com. And O'Neill is Oneill, kimoneillcoaching.com. They can also email me at kimoneil@outlook.com. And of course, that's on the website as well. I'd love to hear from you and yeah, see how I can be a support to your journey for sure.
Thank you. And thank you again for sharing your time and your generous heart and spirit with us. Really appreciate you for being here.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, everyone. And I'd love to hear your response to the podcast episode. Anything you want to share with me about how you heard the episode, something that got your attention, you can contact me. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, but I'm on all social media channels at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD, or you can head on over to the podcast website where we have a free resource for you, and that is leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com. Love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin